We have a packed house, so I'm sure people really want to get into it. I was asked to though start up with a few thoughts, questions. So what I'm going to do is, I made a similar but totally different film to this one. I guess a certain kind of philosophical kinship with it, but formally very different. So I guess the first thing I wanted to ask is, what has been the response in France to the film? It's already been out. There's already been reviews. I've read about half a dozen of them. How would you characterize the response? What kind of conversations has it sparked so far?
I think I had great response, both from the audience and from the media. I guess the media were very much interested by the film because, well, you don't have so many opportunities to hear black voices about these issues on national TV in France, so it's quite new. And also the question of race is at the forefront too in France, because there are more and more tensions in the society, and people are aware that some of these tensions are generated by racial tensions, racial issues that are not addressed. So, and also, one of the reasons I spoke about my personal history, my family history, is that in France, it's believed that social issues are because of classism. And because most of the black people belong to the labor class, so it is assumed that their problems are social problems, and they are addressed this way because of the taboo of race. So all the politics, and they don't work obviously, are addressed on a social basis. And that's the reason why I want to talk about myself, to say, no, it's not only a question of class, it's really a question of race, because whatever the class you belong, you're confronted to the same problems.
Right.
And also, and to finish, to answer your question, and also I got an overwhelming response from the audience. I think it was on ARTE. ARTE doubled his audience. So I believe many people came especially turn on their TV, especially to watch that film. I received tons of messages, etc., and especially from black people who felt empowered by the film. Yes.
Right. So it seems like one way to describe the situation is something that's, I think, also become a reality in the U.S., although there are many differences between the U.S. and France, which is kind of racism without racists. You know, like nobody admits to being a racist, and sometimes increasingly not recognize racism. Or when it's recognized, it's not something that I don't do that, you know, so it's hard to explain, you know. So how would you characterize the moment that France is right now in relation to race? Like, how would you describe the moment? Are you in a turning moment, or with the discussions are gaining traction, or are you in a moment where there's increased denial, or, like, for instance, the whole debate about statistics?
Yeah, well, the debate about statistics was like almost 10 years ago, and it's clear that they won't do it, they don't want to do it, and even the people who are pro-statistics, they gave up because they probably won't be accepted by politics. I think France is in crisis right now. The French model doesn't work anymore. And so we are at the moment that we should reinvent a new model, but I don't think politics have the courage to do it because it will need so many changes in the society. So it just, yeah, it doesn't work. Part of it comes from the crisis, obviously. But also I think for me the biggest social issue, yes, is about race. Because France now is a multicultural, multi-ethnic country, but would like to remain a white Catholic country, European country, and you have this contradiction, and so I think everybody feels frustrated. Racial minorities feel frustrated because they don't really belong, and because their issues are not addressed. The one who feel like they are the true Frenchies feel they feel frustrated, and they also feel fear that the country they knew is going to disappear, and that they won't be at home anymore, that they will be invaded by, you know, hordes of Muslims.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the moment we are in now. And I think maybe what's new is that you have new generations. There are no more immigrants, even if their parents or their grandparents were. They are French, and they are very conscious of being French, and they don't want to assimilate, integrate, or apologize for, you know, having some non-European origins. And I think they start to talk, to raise their voices. Well, we don't have any political impact in France, to be honest. So maybe it's more the cultural side. Yeah.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the formal aspects of your film. And kind of, I think the first thought I had when I watched it was Fanon. And in the sense that I wondered what kind of dialogue you were having with Fanon's work, if any, particularly when you talk about when I was 6 years old, like I acquired an awareness of what skin color meant. And if there is a dialogue, is that an echo, a presence, a shadow? I mean, how do you characterize that dialogue?
No, I won't say, well, of course, I'm generally inspired or nurtured by Fanon's work, but I won't say that it was a specific inspiration for this film. Well, some of the scholars, some of the specialists, work on Fanon, etc. So I went to their work, but no, black skins, white mask. I never had the feeling that I was wearing a mask.
No, not in that sense. It's just that kind of primal scene that Fanon sets up when he realizes how he's being viewed. And this, I think, the reflection of the film about media and representation and image speak very much to what he kind of laid out conceptually about what are some of the issues of identity construction and how do images, language play a role in the process. So I think that's the way that I was thinking, that there was certainly an engagement with that line of questioning in the film that seemed very, very evident to me. And then I guess the other question that I think needs to be asked is, towards the end, you make a gesture towards this post-racial. Now here in the US, we've had a lot of debate about this idea of post-racial. So I just wonder first what you mean by that. And in what way do you think it would be comparable or to another context like the U.S.? Like what would be post-racial in France? Maybe different from what people mean here. But
what does it mean here?
What does it mean in France? Like what do you mean by it?
In France, post-racial doesn't exist right now. Well, it's an illusion. It's an illusion.
Right.
We're supposed to live in a non-racial country, not post-racial, but non-racial. And it's an illusion because in the daily life, everybody is very much aware of what is your racial, yes. Well, I know some people were mistaken when, by the end of the film, because I showed this image of my grandparents, so they assumed that for me, post-racial means being...
Intermarriage.
Yeah, mixed people, or mixing, and etc. And that's not what I mean. It's just that getting to the point where you don't have to care anymore about race, and then you tend to consider the others as individuals, and this doesn't matter anymore. So yeah, that's what I mean. And it doesn't mean that we all have to, to mix and reinvent a new race or new humanity, but just come to that point, because you don't want. No, I guess nobody wants to be trapped in a racial category or whatever. It's something that has been created by history, and that we should get rid of. So now my question is, yes, what does it mean, frustration?
Well, we will get to that when we go to the audience questions, but I guess, I think the whole idea, I think the difficulty of this is that the state that's the argument that in the US it's been used, for instance, to eliminate ethnic studies in Arizona, by saying precisely we have to treat everybody as individuals.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean erasing the history, erasing the conflicts. It's just, trying to address them and trying to really try to solve them. That's
right.
what I mean.
I guess what I'm saying is that it's a very complicated thing, because identities are produced in groups. Identities are group identities. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about individualizing identity, the reality is that identities are always collective, not individual. So that's part of the complication. So in other words, if we think about what comes after race, there might be other categories of belonging, of community belonging, that shift things around. We don't know what they look like.
Sure, but I think this burden of race, you don't want to carry it over time, and I think, well, yes, you have a group identity, sure, but I think it's very important, it's essential to have the freedom to have your individual identity, and this is something you're denied when you're assigned to a specific race, to a specific gender, to a specific group. And you don't have anymore this freedom to reinvent yourself or to just be who you are. And for instance, I'm very essentialism. This is something, yes, that can, and you can, yes, for me that is very difficult. It's very difficult to live. And so I think, well, maybe because I'm a filmmaker, I'm an artist, and I consider myself an artist, I think that it's very, very important to be true to yourself, and being yourself, it's bigger than the group you're supposed to belong. And it's not because, it's not because you're black. What does it mean to be black? Should you behave a certain way because you're black? Are you supposed to love or dislike certain things because you're black, or only to listen to a certain type of music? No, you have this freedom to truly invent who you are. So.
Now, you mentioned earlier why you were part of the film, why your story was part of the film. Sometimes the way that things were shot seemed to suggest that you were kind of like a witness to, that you were listening. Mm-hmm. You were listening. Can you talk a little bit about how you crafted your persona in the film? Like, what was your persona, how did you think about that? How do you think of self-representation, basically? I mean, there were so many choices. Could have been done in so many ways, and you picked very specific ways. So I'm just curious about why you picked those ways.
Well, I constructed the film as a personal investigation to understand, to understand from my own point of view the question of race and how I was confronted to it. So it's like a journey in my family history and a journey with other people, meeting other people, trying to understand better the issue. So that's why I'm in the film and listening and trying, etc.
But it seems that in your listening, you're kind of positioning us also in listening to these discourses, and it's an interesting way of positioning or how you represent yourself in that manner. Which brings me, I guess, on the last thing that I wanted to ask you, which has to do with gender. You mentioned, your story. There's an early reference that that part of what was offensive about being asked to do Balthasar was that not only was it because you couldn't do what you wanted to do, which was Virgin Mary, but also that it was a boy's role. So I just wonder, in what ways does gender enter the picture for you in thinking about your experience as a black person in France?
Well, you have this movement of Afrofeminism in France, saying that yes, you have the two. I should have someone translating from here. But yeah, so you have Afrofeminism in France, and but I was a kid. So I think that at that time, the notion I had of my own identity was being a girl. I was at the age where you get conscious that there are boys, you're a girl, etc. That's it. And that's how I could define myself at that time. And then I discovered that I'm supposed to be something else just because of the color of my skin, and this was not something I was taught about or taught. I was taught or told in my family. So I felt very deprived, and I felt that way for a long time because certainly because of the upbringing I received. My parents assumed that race wasn't an issue for us. And so I was brought up, like I would say, in a state of innocence that, you just have to be yourself or be well educated and everything's fine. And so it was when I started to live by myself, at the beginning, it was very difficult for me to even to recognize discriminations because I didn't have the tools. I was like, is it discriminations or is it just because of me? And I think this is a question you always ask yourself when you face this, and I think this is great balance.
So I guess what I meant is, does being a woman have anything to do with your perspective on race?
Well, I won't say that because I think it's because you suffer differently maybe, but it may be even harder for men because men you have the violence, the brutality, the police violence. As a woman, I'm not confronted to that. I would have machismo, but it's the same for every woman. So just another layer, but it's not something specific. Maybe you will have some specific stereotypes associated to black women, and they are usually associated to sexuality, because of the use that was made of our bodies during slavery and colonization, and the fact that at the time where in Europe you had so much repression associated to sexuality, it was very convenient to have some woman you could show naked, so you still have this stereotype associated to black women, but also apart from that, I think there was even more brutality against black men.
Right. Questions. Thoughts? Yes.
First of all,
She's bringing you the mic. Yeah.
first of all, it's an honor to be here. It's a really beautiful film. Thank you. I have a question. What is it to be a Muslim and black in France now?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer you precisely. I know some people who are very much involved in these questions. I'd say, yeah, it's tough. Being a Muslim now in France is tough. How to say that? In the French consciousness, Muslims are Arabs. So they don't really associate Muslims to black people. This is quite different from here, where many black people converted to Islam, and even if certainly, well, the black people from French West Indies are mostly Catholic. The ones who used to come from Africa, I'd say 50% are Catholic or whatever the religion, 50% are Muslim, so it's not really associated to, but so I think you will face maybe the discrimination you face as a Muslim, and it depends also how you live your faith, and do you wear a veil or not, things like that. But it's something specific. Maybe it's going to change because with the recent terrorist attacks, one of the terrorists was black, and it was the first time that a black terrorist assaulted people. So maybe now the perception is going to change, and that people are going to be aware that yes, you have also black Muslims in France. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, for thoughts. My wife is American, I'm French, as you can hear, and we often had kind of discussions, not to say arguments about racism, race, etc. And one day I thought, do we understand the same thing? And I looked at Wikipedia, whatever it is worth. But if you look at the English version of the word RACE on Wikipedia, it's a totally different approach from the word race in French, because culturally, for many reasons, the French think there is one race, which is the human race, and it's not the way the Americans think about their race. So I think it's something that can be thought of. It might be interesting.
Well, part of it is that the World War II really had a very big impact in Europe in the ways that race became an almost unacceptable concept to use to refer to race. So you see often that it's substituted for ethnicity, which then became a much more acceptable way to refer to hierarchical difference that in the US kind of, if you will, stayed unreformed after World War II. Race still was the category that was used to refer to that hierarchical difference that, as you explore in the film, comes from a colonial experience. I don't know if you want to add to that, but it seems like that that's one of the reasons that the concept shifts. Not necessarily what it refers to, but what becomes acceptable to use to refer to that kind of social difference that's hierarchical in nature.
Merci beaucoup. I really appreciate the discussion. I really appreciate the film. I'm an American black. I often go to these discussions because I'm really interested in identity and race in France. And obviously the situation is different between France and the United States, but there are also similarities. And I often feel times that people are talking sort of past each other. And I'm wondering, I mean, obviously you're a filmmaker, and so you want to facilitate conversation. How, beyond attempting to change the culture through film and having discussions like this, how do we get people to really begin to really understand each other? Because at the end of the day, people are human beings, right? I mean, and like you said, people have genuine fears, right? And how do we really speak to that, right? How do we understand each other?
You want to take that?
I think there are also For me, there are two levels: the individual level, the political level. On the political side, it's very difficult because our politics in France doesn't want to deal with with these issues. For them, they don't. I think firstly they don't know how to, because it's a microcosm. It's a microcosm, a white microcosm, mostly men microcosm. They haven't grown up with people from different origins or whatever. So they're very deprived. They really don't know how to deal with that. Then they certainly don't want to. First, because it will abolish some of their privileges, and also because of the rise of the extreme right wing. They think that it's better for they will gain more votes. It's better for them to care about, I would say, the poor white people who believe that they are being threatened by racial minorities. So and also because we're not organized as a political force, because the left wing assume that minorities, whatever they do, will vote for them. So it's not an issue. On the political side, it's really, really difficult to change things right now. And then on a more individual side, I think this is what we're doing, just trying to talk about this again and again and again, and get some understanding from people who are not directly concerned by this. And also, I think that with the social networks, it really changed things, because now everyone can raise their voice. And now you have black people, especially young black people. Whenever something happens, they just react on blogs. They launch petitions, etc. And so sometimes it works. It really works. And for instance, it was really interesting a few years ago, Elle magazine, one of the journalists wrote a small story saying that black people, especially in America, were discovering chic, that they were no more dressing R&B style or hip-hop style. But now, and it was just, a few young women who just started on their blog, and then there was a momentum, and all the media started to talk about that, and there was a controversy, and Elle magazine had to apologize, and since then they've started to put black models in the pages of the magazine. So I think, as a person, I think now you have some means to change things, especially when it touches a brand, when you're in the economical, when it's economical, because big brands cannot afford to be associated to racism. They cannot afford to have this image. So that's a very good mean to change things on that level.
I just want to say that I study media, apart from making media, and I think one of the things that in any place you are in the social map is that fundamental question would be challenging the frameworks that are being used to provide explanations. You know, so for instance, the whole idea that immigrants threaten people, or minoritized or racialized groups threaten groups of people because they take their jobs, or, you know, kind of a bit in the US are the Trump discourse on Mexican immigrants. These are definitely effective political tools, because politics is the calibration of fear. You know, politics runs on fear. So you have to be challenged. Well, actually, it's not true that that framework explains why there are sectors of American society excluded from economic opportunity, that there are more immigrants. That's not the explanation for that. So I think it's like a constant exercise to be challenging certain types of explanations that become common sense, but they're not accurate. That's not why this is happening. And then if I think we have more complex ideas of why things are happening, perhaps we'd be turning less against each other, because those are the simple explanations to what things are happening that are not accurate. But certainly fuel certain kinds of politics that maintain certain kinds of people in power for, you know, long periods of time.
Oui, bonsoir.
Oh yes, okay.
Hi. Congratulations. It's very lovely. I have a question for
Could
you.
you speak up, please?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I have a question for you. I'm curious to know how you define yourself. Since you have an African grandfather, a white grandmother, would you define you as an African or as an African descent?
Or French.
Well, the lady who speaks in the film, the professor Sylvie Chalaï, she has a mixed girl, and she said something to me I really liked. She said, my daughter, she's not half Ivory, or half French. She's 100% Ivory and 100% French. So I would say, that's what I would say, yes.
Thank you for this wonderful film. Yeah, it is race, it's not class. Just look at the example of President Obama, there's a highly educated person with a prestigious job, and still people give him difficulty because of his race. It can't be because of his social position or his job. So it is race and not class, unfortunately. Also, speaking of political figures, the film does not endear Sarkozy to. You rarely see such a display of backwardness. But my question is simply: is there a way that there are some people I want to show this film to? Is there a way? Is it online, or will the DVD be sold? Or because I have some friends that I really have a burning desire to show them to.
I think
I'm sure I'm not the only one. We need distribution.
Yeah, so some DVDs will be available at the end of the discussion if you want to buy some. And yes, I'm about to get a distributor here in the United States, so it would be easier to get the film.
Hi, my name is Awa. I am a teacher in the New York French American School in ARTE. As you know, it's Black History Month here this month, so during the vacation I sent my students with a project to do of Afro-American, not Afro-American because it was some French history, black person who did the history. And what I realized is from when I did my study in France, I didn't have any education about the history of black people in France. As you say, you discover at 6 years old that you were different. For me, it was even later when we have a new kid in the school. I was the only black kid in the school, and I had another boy, and they say, "Oh, you should be friends." That's where it came for me, because from my eyes, I didn't see the difference. And by the way, I had it's interesting because one of my history teachers is in your documentary, but she never teach me about the history of the colonization. I learned more with your documentation, and by the way, my parents are from Ivory Coast too. So I just had a history class right now. So from what I see and what you did about the Ghanaian affair, I was wondering if there is some action you think about making France for educate the children, to have like more history by black people in France, because so far what I feel, we feel like we have to thank the French white people to come in Africa to give us some education, and that's the way as French black woman in France, I grew up like that. I came here and I realized, I had to know, as you say when you came in New York, I realized that no, I don't have to say thank you or sorry because I need to know my history. So my question is, do you think about to do something for the school in France?
Well, I can't like, I'm the one who's going to change by myself. But I think that the question of history and education is related to the question of do we belong? Are we considered as belonging? So does our specific history, that is also the history of France, because you know colonization is the history of France. Slavery is the history of France. So does this specific history, is it considered to be part of the national history, of the national story, the national myth? And also, but I think there are some changes, because a few years ago, national education, they started to teach about African history before colonization, so in the Middle Age. Now they stopped, but they've done it for a few years. Now they teach mainly colonization and slavery. But fundamentally, I think it's related to the question of are we considered to be part of the French history, so that our history is taught. The writers, the philosophers, the artists are also taught, because you were talking about Fanon, but I was speaking with his daughter like last week, and she said Fanon is still very much on the side in France, university.
They're probably teaching more here.
Yeah, sure. Far more. She said it here far more.
I mean, but that's kind of one of the things I would say about frame. Like, if you are not part of the conceptualization, of not only part of the story, but of how history is conceptualized, what constitutes history, that's one of the bigger frames, one of the challenges. If that's the way you're framing things, then you reach certain conclusions, right? And one of the things that I think in the US has happened very forcefully for a pretty long time by now is the insistence of the necessity of incorporating these histories into our notion of what the nation's history is. Mm-hmm. So not only being included, but that when you include it, the story changes entirely. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think, first of all, that's a great introduction to Howard Zinn, A People's History of the United States. Great book. Great. To you, thank you for gracing us with your presence. We've been friends. Even this morning, that's great. And but I want to say thank you for giving us a voice, because just like you, I'm French, African descent. I've been to some extent protected, like a shoot. And to make a long story short, when I knew Sarkozy was going to get elected, I just got out of there. And so thank you for giving us a voice. I think there's a lot to be done. We should organize, and now I'm just worried about something. It seems like too many great achievers who come from our background have to get out of France in order to get recognition. It seems like, or simply to get a job. I mean, college educated from, if you're a decent family, my dad is a physician, a doctor, mom is an accountant, could I get a job in France after grad school? I work for Colombia, hey. But so what will it take in this day and age for people who are black or people who are Arab, who have gone to school, who've done whatever society asked them to do, to not be considered as a danger, or just to be accepted, or just to get a decent job? What do you think about that? Do we all have to get out? Because when I think about it, the young lady over there is a teacher, she's French. Somebody over there is a lawyer, she's my friend actually, she's also French, and I just have so many friends who are in IT like me, or in finance, even in medicine at Columbia, hey. They felt like they had to get out. And those who do not make it here in the US have chosen either Canada or, just like me before, the UK. So even Germany, or, so what, I don't know if you have an idea, but what will it take for that?
I think this is probably, to me, I think this is probably the main frustration that can be felt by people coming from racial minorities. Because what we've been told in France is that, if you study well, you have a good diploma, you get a good job, and whatever your origin, whatever your class, whatever. And the truth is, even if you succeed to do that, and if you come from, let's say, a poor background, it's really difficult to achieve that, because the school is, the education system, though it is supposed to be equal for everybody, it's not. So the good schools are in the posh places. If you live in an inner city, because nobody wants to teach there, nobody wants to have their kids there, so you won't have the same education. And also, you will be fronted to stereotypes. If you're black, you're Arab, you have more chances to be oriented to short studies, not general studies, but technical studies. They won't be given so many opportunities to go to the university, even if university is free and it's not that expensive like here. So it's really a fight. I think it's really a fight, an individual fight, a fight from your family to get you to a point where you could achieve great study. And then you start to work, and yes, and that's when I think you're confronted to biggest discriminations, and especially the more
Against?
Yes, you are, the more discriminated you could be, because you're going to be at a level where you're going to manage people, and there is this, my brother, he works in human resources, and so he told me that they assume that white people wouldn't accept to be managed by black people or Arab people. You have also, there was an interesting study that was made by an independent organization about stereotypes in the companies, and it was quite interesting because the stereotypes addressed to black people were not that negative. It's just that what emerged from that study, it was a study, is that they said in that company, the company that participated, they said that black people are very good on the human side because they're good with relationships, etc. But they are not good managers. Sometimes tend to be lazy. These are the kind of stereotypes. Arab people were seen as difficult to control, possibly dangerous, quite nervous. Asian people, the best. They work hard, they're very skilled, they're very much skilled, they're other kind of stereotypes, and I think yes, people work with that. So and for me, I think it's part of the men feeling frustration felt by minorities, because when I talk even with people, you have even with people.
It's microphone.
Yeah,
even with people who are considered successful, if you talk to them, they had to diminish their ambitions. They didn't get to the point they wanted to, because there always was a point at which there was the glass ceiling, or they were not granted the possibility to go further. And for me, this is the main, yes, the principle of injustice. It just, and just for how long France is going to waste its talents. That's a question. Because it's a waste of talents.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've never studied any situation where a combination, at least of two things, were not at play. One was changing narratives, more voices that you mentioned earlier, and the other one is organization pressuring on the institutions. I don't know of any situation that people just said, oh sure, come on. I mean, so it's been a result of a struggle. And each context, demands different strategies, but without the struggle, it just doesn't happen. Over there? No?
Maybe one
last question, yes. And I guess you own the microphone, so.
That's not very, it's working. Hello, I have a question. Where is the conversation about quotas and affirmative action in France now? How are we? Is it making progress, or is it just not? Because like 10 years ago, 10 years ago, we were talking about it in France. And what? They're still not talking about it?
They don't. No,
they don't want to
they
still?
really don't want to.
How can we force them for?
Well, it's well, when I talked, the thing is, as long as we don't represent a political force, we don't really have many means to change, to make true changes, because we depend on the will of the politicians. And what I've been told by politicians themselves is that it's just a question of, are you a threat for us as politicians, and do we have to take into account your demands, or no? If you don't threaten us in a way or another, why would we care? Because we don't gain anything from that. So
I understand about migrants, but we are French. So like there's a moment where each time we talk in France, each time we talk about race, color, or whatever, it always goes back to direct migration. Are you legal or not? All those illegals. No, because now we are generations and generations of French people.
Yeah, but I would say quotas. Well, politicians in France don't want quotas, because quotas mean that you stop with the colorblind myth. It means that you start to have statistics, because if you want quotas, you need statistics. If there are statistics, then we're going to truly see if the anti-discrimination politics work or not. So it's a whole redefinition of the of the social composition of the country. They don't want that, and at the core of it, I think they don't want that, because it means that if you start to know how wide the discriminations are, and you start to address that, it's a cake. You have a certain number of slices. So if you're going to share with more people, you have less. And for me, it's as simple as that. do we share? Do they share the power? They don't want to share it. Why would they want to? Why would they want to? Maybe one day they will have it too. They will have to do that because if not, the society will crack. We are almost at that point, to me. But for the moment, as long as they are not forced to, they won't do it. And as long as we're not organized enough, or we don't represent a force strong enough, we won't have means to make that change. Because for now, it's just on the goodwill, it's just on the goodwill of the politicians.
But did the massacre change something?
It should have. It should have. After the first terrorist attacks, I think everybody was waiting for a very strong speech, a very strong new direction from our president. He did nothing. He did nothing. And I think they're lost. I really think they're lost. They are lost, and they don't have the courage to really change things. They don't have that courage, because they just think in very short term next elections.
I just want to say something about statistics. Obviously, don't solve everything. Like you have statistics here, and we have a lot of problems. But but being someone that actually has spent the last few years producing statistics that don't exist about Latino inclusion in media. And the history of that in this country is like, for instance, how did women start to push the envelope on media? It was a small group of women at the Writers Guild of America that said how many women are in this studio and how many women are in that studio. And then they compiled their own statistics and they brought it back and said, you see, discrimination is real, right? And it was a tool that they used. It wasn't the solution, it was a tool. So I think on one level, I mean, independent research can start to produce tools. You don't have, I mean, while you fight with the state, while you fight with them, you can produce tools. And each situation basically demands the question of what are your assets and how can you leverage them? So in this case, like for instance, like the work that I've been doing, I think has had a pretty has had an impact on raising awareness of how marginal this population is to media, right?
I think for me, there's at the bottom of it, there's really a change of mentality, because France is against quotas, but now they accept quotas for women. Because I think the mentality has evolved enough, and now it's really considered impossible to exclude women, to continue to exclude women. So now you have quotas for women in the big companies, normally in the political parties where they don't respect them.
In the government they have. The very last government is also, I believe.
Yeah, it's true.
So then that means that the quota idea has taken hold to some extent.
Yeah, but so it means that it's just because it was considered acceptable.
Sure, I understand.
So now at the bottom of the question is, when will we be considered French enough to be granted this?
Right. And on that note, thank you so much.